So welcome to another episode of Run with Julia. This is take 4.
I think it was, yes, yes, because I'm not tall enough to actually take up the right amount of space in the camera. So we've had to have a few reruns to reposition ourselves before we've even started.
And then I forgot what I was introducing. But we're here, take 4, take 5.
In Spain.
In Spain.
Yeah.
Why are we in Spain?
Well, I'm in Spain because you're in Spain. So I've come over here to do some intensive work with you for 12 hours over the course of 3 days. And the plan was for me to do a Running with Julia.
This is Cathy.
interview.
Have we actually
Oh,
said
no.
your name?
No.
Cathy.
Hello.
Yes, the plan was, yes.
The plan was to do a Running with Julia interview while we ran along the beach, but we're not running along the beach. In fact, in a bar, drinking beer. Well, I am.
I'm drinking, well, we can only guess. If it were a Nardi, that would be gin tonic, but mine's the virgin version. So why, well, yes, but Cathy is a runner. So the Run with Julia was a plan that we were going to run along and do a Run with Julia interview, but we're not running.
No, we're not running. Because I've had a bit of a flare up with my foot, which is something that's happened quite a lot, this foot injury, over the last couple of years. And as Julia says, I have been a runner for a long time.
You've been a runner for how long, Cathy?
So,
Because it's very
since
interesting.
I started running when I was 23 for a bet to do a half marathon. Somebody at work bet me that I couldn't do a half marathon, and I thought, oh, I'm fitter than him. I certainly, if he can do a half marathon, I certainly can do a half marathon. And then,
Did you train?
I felt I was fit because I played tennis and that kind of thing. And then I tried running round the block, and I found that I had to kind of run a few yards and then walk a few yards and run a few yards and walk a few yards, and it was quite a humbling process. But I did do the Yateley half marathon in, I think it was 1983, something like that.
And you did that. How soon after the bet did you actually run a half
About
marathon?
6 or 8 months, something like that.
Gosh, and did you actually do running that changed from running a few steps, walking a few steps?
Over time, I did train enough to, I can't remember whether I'd run the whole distance or run around 10 miles of it, but I'd certainly trained enough to do the event on the day. And it was a lovely sunny day, and my mum and her friend came up to watch. It was a big thing actually, because running wasn't a big sport back then.
It had hardly come out of it. Was just, I think there'd been 2 London marathons by 83, but it was still very small, wasn't it? It wasn't something people did.
Well, I remember being laughed at when I was out training. People would sort of point and go, oh, what's she doing? It was quite. But it was a lovely sunny day, and my mum and her friend came, and my friend Tony came along, and he'd been encouraging me to train for it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And then I just started running. Well, carried on running ever since.
What
really.
was it that about it then? So the bet started you. Did you actually enjoy the half marathon itself then?
I did. I think I did. I mean, it's difficult to remember, and what I do have a very strong image of, because I've got pictures of myself running around it that this friend of mine took, and I look ecstatic in it. I had a little pair of pink shorts on, which would now be considered totally unsuitable as runner's gear. And an ordinary t-shirt and probably a completely unsuitable pair of shoes.
It is interesting, and the thing that kept you going then, so you kept running after that. Did you have a routine, or did you just go running when you felt like it? What was it that kept you? Because it is an interesting thing that keeps us running.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because
what keeps us going?
I mean, I also went to the gym at the time, and I think the gym was equally a big part of my fitness regime. But running had started to sort of take over, and I started to get more and more interested in it, and I was doing more and more running and less gym. And then I signed up for a couple of other races, and then I think it was probably about the mid-90s, early 90s, somewhere around there, when I really, it really sort of took off. And I was training with a personal trainer who, it was all about time and me getting my time.
I remember the story.
Down.
I remember the story Cathy tells me of when she was training with the personal trainer, and he was coaching her and was very keen on time, that there's a road crossing the Marylebone Road coming out of Regent's Park, which I go past quite often, and I had this vision. So tell us what used to happen there.
Well, he took me up to the running track in Regent's Park, and we came back, and he was so fixated on my times and my, you've got to keep running, that he actually stopped the traffic on the Marylebone Road, which is this enormous road, one of the main roads through London, and he just ran out, put his arm up, stopped the traffic. I ran over the road, and he ran onto the other side of it, the other side of the sort of dual carriageway thing, and did the same again.
Every time I cross that road, where I wait for ages, where traffic's coming this way and that way and the other way, I think of Cathy having the traffic stop for her. But the time thing, were you caught up with the time?
I was very caught up with the time, and I can't remember what my best half marathon time had been before that, but I'd trained, and the idea was that I could hit 1 hour 45 for a half marathon, and I had signed up for the Great North Run, and that was the run that I was going to do, and it was almost as if my whole life depended on the Great North Run and it all working out. And of course races never work out as you're expecting them to, and the Great North Run,
particularly with that degree of pressure, perhaps.
Totally. Because what happened was that there were so many people that you couldn't really start running properly for 3 miles. And so then I was so caught up in this whole thing of wanting to, I had to do 7-minute miles or 7.5-minute miles or whatever it was all the way around. And so I then started running really, really fast once I'd got past all the queue to get out of the park, and then by mile 10 I was so blown up, I'd blown myself up, and if somebody could have airlifted me off that course at that point in time, I'd have taken them up on it. It was just the most awful experience, and I then slowed and ended up, I can remember the last bit along the seafront with hail coming at you at a horizontal angle, and I was overtaken by an Emmerdale star who was about to retire. And he was about 25 years older than me.
But did you learn from it, or did you carry on to getting caught up with times?
I got really, really upset about that.
Dear. Oh dear.
Really upset. And then I went back, and my trainer said, well, you've just got to get back on the bike and do another one. And I did do, and a few weeks later I did beat that time. And as you know, Julia, even years later when I met you, I was still hooked into times, and by that time we had GPS. So we had the woman in your ear going, "You've just run the last half mile in."
I think you retired her from your life.
I do. I have done.
But I think you retired her on our last intensive 4 years ago. Cathy
Yes,
has
I think
4-year gaps between doing intensive work with me.
Anyone wants to know why? Just ask me.
Ask the question below, Cathy will answer. But we did go on an intensive 4 years ago.
We did, and I was running then, wasn't I? Because I was training for something.
You were training to run the canal path.
I was.
For your 60th.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
But you did have the lady.
I did have the lady. Yeah, so I was very wedded to it. And
She used to tell you every mile.
every half mile.
Every mile. But when did you retire her? Because I know we investigated that. Because just to say, any of you who enjoy having your data recorded back to you or repeated back, we're all different creatures. And we are the only people who will know what's right for us and what isn't right for us. And I think for you, Cathy, it wasn't right for you. It kind of deepened attention.
It did. It definitely did. Yeah, yeah. And I can remember finding that because we went running on my intensive to add to everything else, and
In the dark.
In the dark.
In the morning, early, trying
without
to find
being
the canal.
able to find the canal. But you were you took me out on that run, and we were running for 9 minutes and walking for 1 minute,
Yes.
something like that. And I had never done that, and I found it really quite traumatising.
Except now we're talking in a whole interview. You started like that, walking and
Yes,
running.
I did.
But
yes,
we did, yes. And I made Cathy run for 9 minutes, walk for 1 minute, and just to kind of realise the place of where you were attached to continually running. And you found it traumatising. Explain, because that will be an interesting thing because there will be people watching who probably aren't wedded to routines, and some who aren't, and some it works for, some it doesn't. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I was wedded to it because I felt I just had to achieve that, and so the whole of every run that I did, I'd be thinking, oh, I need to go a bit faster. Oh, and it really didn't make running enjoyable at all. And when I took that away, it took me quite a while to get used to it. I didn't like it at first. I felt like I'd lost something. I needed somebody to tell me how well I was doing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And but once it had gone, it was some months later, and I started to really enjoy running, and I even got to the point where I'd go out running and I'd have a little rucksack on, and I'd go on a sort of, I think I'll go and find where the Mark Bolan Memorial is, and I'd sort of, wheedle my way around the lanes, and then I'd stop for a coffee, and then, and so I actually got to the point where running was really enjoyable, and I can remember once I took the tube into London, went to a museum, and then ran back along the Thames, and it was just fantastic because I was free of this woman telling me, free of me having to perform to. Did she have an American accent as well? You have. Yes.
Yes, she did. Because I had to run with this woman too. When I was on the intensive with Cathy, we had the woman who was strapped to your arm going, you have just run, I can't do American accents, you have just run 4 minutes 52 for the last half mile or whatever. Yes. But then we also stopped and watched those swans.
Did we?
Yeah, and you wouldn't normally have stopped.
No, I probably wouldn't. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember
I remember that particularly because we were along this canal and it did get light. We used to go off in the dark, but it got light, and then there was this swan. It was a little baby swan, and we wondered. I think we were wondering whether it was trapped in the lock.
I don't remember this at all, Julia. No.
This happens to me. I can't really strange memory, haven't I? That I remember lots of details of things. Then we thought it was trapped, but it wasn't.
Okay.
And it took off, and it soared off, and we stopped and watched it.
I do remember. Yes, I do remember. Okay.
For a minute, I started thinking if I made it up, as if it's something I dreamed.
Yes, I do remember.
And you stopped.
Yes.
So something changed. So that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
What's happened since?
Goodness.
Because there has been lots of, because you love running, and yet, really, for 2 years, you were in the Run with Julia video when Jamie was teaching us handstands, and that was the first time you'd run. But what's happened in the last 4 years with your running?
So in the last 4 years, I did complete my 60th birthday challenge, but not in the way that I was expecting to. The idea was that I ran down the Grand Union Canal from, I can't remember where I was going to start, not as far as Birmingham, but somewhere up there, down to Ealing, where I live. And
we were all coming to a party.
And I had my 60th birthday booked. I'd invited people to run parts of it, walk parts of it, whatever they wanted to do with me. And it was, it was a big deal. And then we got locked down about 2 months before my 60th birthday. So obviously that didn't happen. But running was a great thing for me during that time. And I discovered parts of London that I didn't know existed, and I think at that time I was probably I wasn't completely free of just going out and the freedom that I just described, because I think I was training for this and I really, really wanted to complete it. And I did, but there was quite a lot of mental pain involved in it. And then when I had done it, it was a sort of feeling of, oh, well, I've done it now. What now?
It is quite an interesting thing, because it's quite a common thing that when people have achieved a goal, that there can be a loss, because they've lost something. They haven't got that thing they're going towards anymore. So what happened next?
So what happened next was that I saw somebody doing a gymnastics thing on the rings called Skin the Cat, and I think you've done it, so people might have seen you do it. But
I'm not sure if in this channel, it might have been
maybe.
in my barefoot channel, maybe in this channel, but I have done the Skin the Cat, not for a while.
No. So, but I didn't have any, I didn't have the upper body strength or the core strength.
Describe what a Skin the Cat is.
So, you are on the rings and you bring your legs up and then over your head, right the way down, so that you're in a kind of comma shape, and then you pause. And then bring them right back up, go to vertical again, and then in a controlled way lower them to the floor.
What made you want to do that?
I just saw somebody doing it and I thought, oh, that looks like fun. And but I had no idea what lay ahead of me. So that Skin the Cat, which I finally did in December, just gone. Took me 2.5 years to develop the body strength in the right places, the skills, to stop being fearful of sort of being upside down and so on, and to actually do it. But what really helped me was that half the way through this process, I tore a ligament in my in the second toe of my right foot, and I couldn't run. So I was spending a lot more time in the gym, and actually, although I was quite upset about not being able to run at the time, it did have its huge benefits. But it led it didn't get better, and it led to me going to a surgeon who didn't treat me in the right way, and that caused further problems, and I ended up having a couple of operations on my foot. So
It's been a big journey, Cathy.
it has been.
It really has,
It's
hasn't it?
about 2.5 years, I suppose it is now.
What I've witnessed is you really, in all the things we've been talking about here, at some level about the letting go of the attachment to things, haven't we? And we've been talking about that. Whether it's attachment to a time, whether it's attachment to somebody, you know, the thing telling you what time you've done, whether you've done well enough, to running itself even to the skin the cat. It was a much longer process than you'd have ever realised.
Yeah.
And the not running actually has changed something in you, I've seen anyway. Would you say that, because it has been difficult, I mean...
Oh, without a doubt. But I think, well, I don't know whether running has... I'd be interested to hear what you think it's changed.
What, the not running?
The not running.
Ah, what shall I say?
Go on, yeah.
I think that I've seen a deeper acceptance of what is.
Yes.
And that even though it's been difficult at times, and there's been times where you've been very, what's the word, you know, relaxed about the process when you actually had the operations, the recovery process. There's been times it's been more difficult when it's taken longer than you hoped, or it's had a backslide. But I've seen an acceptance to a huger degree than I've ever seen in you, and even to arriving here and not being able to, let alone run down on the seafront. We haven't even been able to walk to the seafront.
No.
And so I've just seen a change in the person I met, because I met Cathy 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we started working together, didn't we? 5.5? Yeah, 5.5. Yeah, I suppose nearly 6 years ago.
And I met you at that dinner. with
Yes, just before I was going to run the Surrey half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, have fun or something.
You said enjoy, and I could hear your voice in my head as I was on the starting line.
And you wouldn't have done this kind of work then, but you did, having met me, say, if I were to ever do this kind of mentoring, coaching, healing, whatever we want to call what I do, work, I'd do it with Julia, if I were ever to do it.
In the unlikely event. But here I am.
No, that's what I notice, is a deeper level of acceptance.
Yes,
and
I
also
think that's true.
An awareness you'll run again.
Yes.
It's not a feeling that it's gone.
No. And I mean, I have gone back to running. I started just before Christmas. I started running again, and on Christmas Day I ran 3 miles. And this is just a minor
setback.
in the moment.
So what would you say? People have listened, your running journey's been 41 years of what would you say? I've known you 5 of those. What would you say running's given you? What have you learned? What would you say? Would you give anybody else? I mean, whatever, just for the finale of our interview.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a huge part of my life that I've absolutely loved, and I think the freedom to just leave, put your shoes on and go is amazing. I've always felt that about running, and more recently, the letting go of these things, like it doesn't matter whether I perform, as long as I enjoy it. And so that, yes, I'd probably end with your words to me before the Surrey Half Marathon, which is just enjoy.
That's brilliant, Cathy. Thank you. I've really enjoyed this.
I've really enjoyed it as well.
Really good.
Yeah.
So obviously everybody watching, they do know that they have to like and subscribe.
And subscribe.
Thank you.